thank you for participating with us at everythingcapetown.com for our Women's Month journey and celebration. Can you tell us who you are and what do you do?
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me. And my name is Lauren, obviously. I'm a theologian, firstly. And I keep saying a female theologian, but I'm obviously a female. A theologian, a radio journalist, as well as an author. And those things sound quite separate, but they're quite interlinked. So a lot of my work just spreads out from that community work or, book writing, history work, activism work, advocacy I'm also involved with. So just doing a lot of different things, but career-wise, three main areas: theology, journalism, and book writing.
Awesome. And so what was the first thing that interested you or made you want to come into, should I say, the writing or the journalism field? Was it theology first? Was it presenting first?
This is actually quite interesting. I think I was about 5 years old when I started writing, which is very young. And I know, and it's no Picasso or like Van Gogh stuff. It was just very basic, like I like this or I don't like that. But I found writing was a real way to understand my emotions. I grew up in a family where there was abuse. It was an abusive home, and I found that writing was a therapist for me. It was healing for me, but it was also a dream. I always dreamt of being a writer. But to be honest, when you're in school, no one ever nurtures that. How many times have they said to you, you can have a career as a writer? No. You cannot have a career as a creative because you have to find another job that's going to support your writing job. And that's what I got told.
That's correct, yeah.
So I dreamt about being a writer, but never thought that it would be a reality for me. So I actually was a therapist for a number of years for gender-based violence.
Wow.
And became a trauma worker, non-profit trauma worker, working with people who were affected by crime or rape survivors, gender-based violence, all kinds of things like that. So, but what was interesting, our life is like a divine map often, and I was in therapy and not having therapy, but giving people therapy. And organizations started approaching me, newspapers, hospitals, malls even, and this was 2009, started saying, we want gender-based violence campaigns. We want someone to write about this topic. I had a degree in journalism already, and I started writing about gender-based violence or how to help a friend who was being abused. 13 years ago, we were not talking about this topic as much as we're talking about now. It was very much a topic that was still taboo. Taboo, and needing to be emerged. I needed to come full circle. And at the time, I started doing my master's and started writing on gender-based violence, and it just grew from there. And then I started doing research into gender-based violence, women's experiences, started sharing those stories. My husband was a pastor, so I was always interested in theology as well, but definitely not as a career choice. Who gets paid to teach the Bible? Who does that? Who gets paid? And my husband always said to me, do you think that you understand the Bible, learn the Bible, and can grasp the knowledge of the Bible in such a way that it's just for you? This is also for other people, and I was like, oh, I don't know. So it was really about that psychology journey emerged into journalism and writing. And then at the same time, that emerged into the theology space. And then somehow it emerged into radio journalism. I was a journalist for a number of years, a print journalist, and so I wrote stories about women's issues around the world. So I went to West Africa and wrote about girls offered on altars for the sins of their fathers, for example, and it is really happening in there. I worked with genocide in China for 4 years, creating awareness on the routine killing of baby girls in China just because they're born female. Something ridiculous. In 34 years, 100 million girls routinely killed, and some of them are born and then killed.
And it's still happening.
And it's still happening, especially in India. It's happening all the time because girls are favored less than boys are, and there's a lot of customs around that and societal issues that we have to talk about. So it was about creating that awareness, and then obviously gender-based violence, FGM, and then I really started also writing a lot about gender in theology,
Oh, wow.
women stories, women in the Bible, and why women are called to leadership, which is actually still a controversial issue, which I find interesting, and why women can serve, where they should serve, and it all just kind of
Fell into
merged
place, yeah.
and then just fell into it. It's very organic,
Yeah.
very natural.
The alignment
then-
was happening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then print journalism became radio journalism, and that's what I really love. But I still write books now, so it just kind of just things just always evolve, isn't it? They
Yeah.
just follow like your course, just be obedient to what's in your heart, go and move intuitively, and things just happen.
And it will, what's meant to be, as I say, will be.
Exactly.
Thanks for touching on that. Can you tell me a little bit? You mentioned now just briefly about the leadership and how it's still a weird topic to hear. A female is maybe a CEO of, this type of company in this type of industry, for example. Can you touch on that a little bit?
I think that's such an important point that you raise, and it's such a big question. We still have inequality today, like women don't get paid the same as a guy for doing the same job. It's just what we've inherited. We see now, even in July this year, we know about the Tour de France, for example. My husband loves cycling, so I have to reference Tour de France. The Tour de France has been around for almost 110 years, but there's never been a Tour de France women's race. So female cyclists can win any other race, but they never wear the yellow jersey. They never pull on the yellow jersey of the Tour de France. So what has happened this year in 2022, we are seeing history being written for the first time. We have a female Tour de France. They only get to ride a week. The guys get to ride 3 weeks. They don't get as paid as much. They don't get as much sponsorships. But again, history is being written.
It's a start.
It's a start. Yeah, it's a start. And the point is that we are living in a generation of women who are asking for different things. We are asking for more, but because we know we're worth more. But we still have issues with leadership. Women are expected to, I read an interesting quote the other day that said, women are expected to work as though they are not mothers, but they're expected to mother as though they do not work.
Yeah.
And it's these two ideals. Like, you can't have both, but yet everyone else can have both.
Yes,
It's just not you. So we do still have issues of leadership as well. And I want to bring it back to faith communities. And it's not just the Christian faith. It's the Jewish faith as well as the Muslim faith, the 3 Abrahamic faiths, that there are still problems with female leadership. And I meet women of different faiths all the time that say, I wish I could study theology, but I'm Muslim, so I cannot. I am Jewish, so I cannot, and so then you have women that go against the grain, and then they do it.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, but they, experience a lot of difficulties and challenges. So I think we need to realize there are still issues with female leadership today, not because women have a problem. We don't have a problem with it, but we've inherited a mindset that is teaching us that we can't have that. But yet we are standing up and saying, where does that mindset come from? Why are we still having that mindset? And we are actually not going to be held down by that mindset anymore. We need to change things. But again, then we also have a large part of women, and I need to say it, that don't want women in leadership, that don't want females to rise up and be in leadership because they're comfortable with the way things always are. So we have all these challenges, and we just have to do what we're called to do. I always say, just do what you're called to do. If I'm a female and I'm called to leadership, I'm just going to do what I'm called to do. No one's going to tell me that I cannot, because this is what I'm called to do.
Yeah.
So anyone who's listening that maybe says, I feel called to some leadership role, whether it's a CEO, whether it's a director, whether you are a COO, whether you want to be a pastor, a priest, whether you want to be an imam, I don't know.
Yeah.
If that is your journey, then follow that journey and see where it leads you. And expect challenges, but you have what it takes to rise up for the challenges. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been chosen for your role and your task.
I love that. Thank you. Can you touch a little bit on challenges that you were faced with growing up coming into your industry, work, personal, perhaps?
If I think of my challenges, I would say that they're all personal. I cannot look at anyone and say that anyone was a challenge to me, but I'd say I'd had to overcome my own struggles. One of them being, and I have spoken about this often, and I actually have healed a lot from this. I'm still working on it. Is the intense fear of failure and the intense self-doubt that I've had to live with. And part of that, and I want to say this because someone might need to hear this, that a lot of times people say to me, it's probably because of your father. You know, my father was verbally and emotionally abusive. And he told me that I'd be a failure when I got older. I never believed him, all right? And I healed through that. However, what I did discover was that I developed a defense mechanism within myself against his words. And that defense mechanism taught me to be strong. And it taught me that you're not going to be a failure ever, Lauren, but you need to be strong. You need to be this. You need to be that. So little Lauren was protecting me and did a really good job. But it came to a point in my life where I was like, but I'm still doing things out of fear. I'm still doing things because I'm afraid of failing. I'm still doing things because I don't want to be what I was told I would be. And I'm not that. So I had to begin to uncover my own internal voice and begin to engage with the voices inside of myself. And a really great coach said to me, it's not about getting rid of that voice that tells you you're not good enough or you're going to fail or you have self-doubt. It's not, or whatever your voice is, because we all have voices that speak to us. We all have things that we think. Some people talk about imposter syndrome. I've never had that. I don't know what that's like, but I do know it's a voice. I do know it's a message. And a coach once said to me, it's not about getting rid of that voice. It's about speaking to that voice. It's about speaking to that voice and saying, what is it that you're wanting to do for me?
Like speaking to a little Lauren who's protecting
Exactly.
you.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And so when I was able to engage that voice and say, how are you trying to protect me? What is it that you're trying to protect me from? And it was that voice telling me, I'm trying to protect you from, you know, being X, Y, and Z. And then it was like, okay, so let's do things together, but let's do it differently. Let's not create from a place of fear. You're trying to protect me from failing. Failure is, there's nothing wrong with failing. I don't believe any of us fail. I believe that we learn. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. So it's about engaging the voice and turning those messages around. My own challenges have always been personal because I'm a very even though I'm an extrovert, I'm a very intra person, very self-aware. So it's about dealing with my own self and affirming myself and affirming what I bring to the world and dealing with that fear, failure, and self-doubt. That was my biggest challenge. I've never really felt challenged by people, so to say, because I've always been a freelance journalist or a freelance something, so I kind of have worked for myself, which is probably a benefit. So I've never really had to deal with that. But challenges of just general life, you know. And then also, my big challenge that I had was when I got married, transitioning from being a very strong, independent woman to suddenly being married and asking myself, am I still a strong, independent woman, even though I am married? And that's a big question. I felt very down once I got married, and I married someone wonderful. And it wasn't about him or our marriage. It was about, I had only witnessed one way that marriage was. And that was a father who came home who expected my mom to cook. Food had to be on the table at 5, otherwise it got really bad in our house. Things were very patriarchal and authoritarian. And that was the only marriage I'd ever really witnessed. I didn't see anybody else's marriages. So when I was very strong, independent, and knew that I was called to be a leader, I was never a leader as a child or even as a teenager. Only as I got older, called to be exactly what I needed to be. And I struggled with knowing if I could be all those things in my marriage. I had an identity already. How would my husband accept that?
Yeah. Because it's different once you're married.
Yeah, it's super different.
Together, yeah. You know?
What is his expectations of me? Like, what is the expectations? I think when you're young and you get married, you know, you can have all that premarital counseling. It doesn't sort any of that stuff out. You know, you only. And when I realized I married someone who actually is a champion for other women, who is also in the theology space now and teaches why women can lead, why women can preach, is such a strong advocate. And my husband's the kind of person, like, he's just like so chilled for me to be doing everything that I do, you know. I'm Lauren Jacobs, and that is my maiden name. My husband doesn't have an issue with that, you know. Sometimes he's called Mr. Jacobs. He doesn't have an issue with that. That's not his surname. But he's never felt intimidated by strength. But we only realized that many years into our marriage. I struggled with knowing, could I be who I am within that marriage space? And I want to say that because I meet a lot of young, newlywed girls who struggle with the exact same thing. And they go, I don't know who to be in my marriage, because I feel called to this and I want to do that. But my husband is intimidated by it. He doesn't want me to earn as much as he does, or he doesn't want me to earn more, or he doesn't. Women, actually, we deal with this on a daily basis. Girls and women just don't speak about it. It's like, can I shine? Can I be the public figure? And my husband's not. Will he be intimidated by that? Will he be intimidated if someone gets his last name wrong, and calls him by my name? So that was a challenge that I had to overcome in myself. I'm really grateful that I have overcome that challenge, because it was an identity crisis that I had 12 years ago of going, could I be who I really was? And a lot of my friends said to me, maybe your destiny was never for you to get married, because I had such a crisis. But that wasn't true. I was supposed to, but also reveal what it means to be a marriage of equals, where we could champion one another.
Love that.
And it's a big challenge. For a lot of people, it is, especially cultures come into, and religion comes into it. So that was a challenge, but happy to say that we overcame that challenge.
Yes.
So it's good.
Thank you for touching on that. We almost done. There's just one more thing I'd like to touch base on, with something that's also hardly spoken about, and that's, we spoke of little different leadership issues, and there's also something like women bullying women. In your space, have you ever encountered, or do you know some tips on that type of situation?
Yes, I almost want to say yes before you even finish talking. Yes. Firstly, I was bullied at school, so by girls. So that was a big deal. I once emptied a kettle of boiling hot water over my foot because I didn't want to go to school.
Oh my goodness.
So that is how intense the bullying was. And I didn't tell my parents. You just don't, But it was girls that bullied me. And I want to say that bullying doesn't happen for the reasons we think. It wasn't because I was a nerd or had no friends. It was the exact opposite. I had guy friends and I was popular. My parents were quite affluent. And so when these girls were bullying me, they would say to me, why is it that you have more than we do? What have you done to deserve that?
Oh, wow.
And I would hear that from them. So it's not for the reasons we think. And then also, yes, as you get older, workplace bullying is a big thing. I've never experienced it, but I know a lot of women that have. And they are bullied by other women. What I've realized about life is when you feel like your space is under threat, you will do anything to protect that space. And so because women have not had the opportunities as men have had, and it's not to be nasty about men, it's just unfortunately that reality that we've inherited is that women feel the need to protect their space. So if you, the director, and you're a woman, and all the rest are men, you feel intimidated by another strong woman that comes in because you feel your space is threatened.
Yeah.
Because you only have one space. There's only one space. So sometimes that bullying happens. But then I want to say in religious communities, and it's many different faiths, women they like sometimes to be comfortable in what they have or what they've been taught. So I've had challenges with women not accepting me as an ordained minister, as a theologian, as a PhD candidate, as someone who brings that to the table and who's saying, women can lead, we're here to lead, let us lead, we're going to lead.
It must have been quite a few remarks.
Exactly. And then women that stand in the way of other women. And I just really want to encourage women not to do that. There's more than enough space at the table. We always say it. And it is true. I mean, there's more than enough for everybody, and also we need to just challenge ourselves a bit and say, what is my real thinking? Why do I feel this way against Layla? Like, what has happened that, let's just challenge ourselves a bit and go, there's a female leading here. Why do I feel aggravated by her or jealous or upset about her? Just begin to look at yourself and go, actually, I'm feeling threatened. Why? Not by her, because my space might be gone. My job, I might lose my job. Might not have an income. All of those things. So there is a lot of bullying, but we can overcome that. And it's also just to really champion one another as women. We always say it.
Yes.
Let's do it. Let's stop being
Yeah.
competing. And just because she's wearing a nicer top doesn't mean she's better than you. I promise you. Don't look at her strange in the mall. Don't as we say, we'll ski off that woman out. Like, don't do that, please. Because
Yeah.
you know what I mean. We have to be. Let's not. You know, let's just champion each other.
It's like you said, we say the words, so put action to it, and
Exactly.
it's a topic we hardly speak about. It's normally, men and gender-based violence, but I mean, there's women that does it to women as well.
That's right.
So thank you for touching on that. Before we end off, Lauren, any advice for the youth or women wanting to come into the space that you're in your industry?
I would love to give young women, also speak to a lot of young women that go to Bible college or like studies, the theology university. And they always say, I'm studying the Bible because I want to become a pastor. So that's the only thing that they think that they can be. But we need women to be theologians. I had an incredible meeting that touched my life in 2020. I'm going to touch on really quickly with Ella Gandhi. She is Mahatma Gandhi's granddaughter, and I had the privilege of spending time with her. And she said to me, we need more women, and she's Hindu, we need more women to interpret their own religious texts. We need women to do that. We need you to study the Bible, to become interpreters of the Bible, translators of the Bible. We need these things from women because God speaks to women differently as well. We are unique. Everybody has God speaks to me as Lauren the girl, He speaks to me as the woman, and I understand him in a different way. So I want to encourage young women, if you feel like studying your faith, please go for it. Please do it. And not just on the thing I'm going to be a pastor or a priest or religious leader. There are many different fields where you can go to. You can even become a professor, and that's exciting. So please expand your thinking and say, I feel called to this, and just do it, And don't think, is it going to make me money? Because then you're never going to study anything. Just do it. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Anyone who's watching this and who it might touch and wanting to reach out to you, how can they get in touch with you?
The best way to do it is I love social media just for the interaction engagement. It's so cool. And on Instagram, it's Lauren Jacobs Author. And then I have a website with a contact form, and it's laurenjacobs.co.za. People always ask, is it www? Those of us on the internet know that www doesn't exist really much anymore. Just laurenjacobs.co.za. You will get there. Use the contact form. Please, if you want to say hi, do so, or on social media.
Perfect. Thank you, Lauren, so much for joining us today and allowing us into your space.
Thank you so much. It's been such a great honor. Thank you.